Now that you have seen how to create Countif, SUMIF, and AVERAGEIF functions, we're going to take it to another level. Currently, the functions that we've done is based on single criteria only. If you have a condition that you need to meet that is multiple criteria to get a result, you'd have to look at additional functions. So in the same workbook, you'll see there's a worksheet called multiple criteria. And to give you an example, what we'd like to look for here, and in row 2 I've put a criteria note for you to remind you, is we don't only want to count full-time employees. We have a set of criteria we'd like them to meet. So they need to be full-time, that's our first criteria. They need to have a job rating of 4 or 5, and they need to be with the company for at least 20 years or more. And those are the 3 criteria we need to check and then count or sum or average. So instead of using a countif function, we could also nest a whole lot of countif functions, but there's something else we can use. We just add an S to the function name. So you've got something as well called countifs, SUMIFs, and AVERAGEIFs. So if you start typing out the countif function, you'll see the countif tells you it counts the number of cells within a range that meets the given condition, single condition. Countifs counts the number of cells specified a given set of conditions or criteria, in other words multiple criteria. And incidentally, you can add up to 31 different sets of criteria for a single countifs function. So that's the function we're going to do. Now the countifs and SUMIFs and averages all work exactly the same way. The criteria required for the function works in pairs. You have the range and the criteria for your first pair, and then you can go on to add another pair in the same structure, range and criteria. So what is my first criteria? Well, having a look at this here, my first criteria is the status. So it says I need the range first. So my range will be column D. The criteria would be the status of full-time. Now that makes up my very first pair. Then I move to criteria range 2. I need the job rating to be 4 or more. So my range would be job rating, comma, and my criteria would be greater than 3. Or you can say greater than or equal to 4 or 5. In this case, it would be easier just to put in 3 as we're dealing with whole numbers. Keep in mind, when you put in greater than signs, you need to make sure that you've used the inverted commas in your formula. So inside of the inverted commas, I'm going to put in greater than 3. And that is my second paired criteria done. If I have a look at my row 2, I can see there's another condition I need to meet. The years of service need to be 20 years or more. So I can now select my years of service column, that's my range, and my criteria is basically greater than 19. Again, don't forget your inverted commas. And that is my 3 paired criteria. If we have a look, there's pair number 1, here's pair number 2, and there's pair number 3. This will now tell me exactly how many full-time employees I have that have a job rating of 4 or more and have been with the company for at least 20 years or more. And what I can do now is just copy that function down. Because we are so specific, you can see there's not many employees that meet that criteria. Let's now try it with our total salary. There's one difference to the SUMIFs functions. Before you start putting in your pairs of criteria, you first need to select the sum range that you would like to add once all the criteria has been met. And in this case, your sum range is your salary column. Our first criteria is that the status, which is this column over here, needs to be full-time. My job rating, which is this column over here, needs to be greater than 3. And my last criteria is my years of service. I can't click on this column because my formula is in the way. That's my range. And the criteria, again in inverted commas, needs to be, let's have a look here. I've actually clicked on the wrong column, so I'm just going to go back and correct that. So my third criteria is years of service, which is column L. And my criteria in inverted commas is greater than 19 years. That will now do the necessary, and it will give you back a value. So let's have a look at exactly how it got to this value. So it seems that it's taken this one over here. If we have a look, it's full-time, 31 years of service, job rating of 4. So it is doing the correct calculations. For average, it works the same as our SUMIF. You first need to select the range that you want to average, and then move on to your criteria pairing. So the first criteria is that let's just go back. The range that I need to average is my salary range, and that is based on the next set of criteria. The first criteria range being that my status, and let's select that criteria. My next criteria range is my job rating, which is inverted commas greater than 3. And my last criteria range is years of service, and the criteria for that, inverted commas, is greater than 19. Now these values are exactly the same because we are dealing with one employee. So we're going to go and edit those functions to make them a little bit more adjustable so that we can see some more data. But before we do that, you'll notice that over here we have a divide by 0 error. So if we have a look at this error, let's take a look as to why this is happening. Mathematically, you cannot divide by 0. So because there are no hires, there is no salary, the average, mathematically speaking, cannot take place. It does not mean, however, that we don't have a correct formula. And sometimes you'll have a situation like this where you have errors on your spreadsheet that have to be there. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with your function. It means that you're missing information. So instead of displaying the errors, there's one other function you can use that'll show this a little bit more professionally. So in front of our average ifs, and in fact in front of any function in Excel, from VLOOKUPs to averages to sums, you can put something in called an if error. Then you would put your function inside of the value field, and when you're done, push your comma and display the value you would like to show if there is an error. Make sure if it's text that it's done in inverted commas. So in this case, I will put no employees, because that tells me the data is blank for a reason. It'll only display that information if there is an error in that particular cell.